A girl who didn't even reach the Wimbledon quarterfinals. And yet an entire country is throwing her a hero's welcome. Why? Stay with this story. By 4 o'clock on July 15th, the gates at Glorietta Activity Center will open, and for the first time in her career, Alex Eala will walk out to a crowd that isn't there to watch her play tennis. They'll just be there to watch her. Globe Telecom has been building toward this moment since the day her Wimbledon run ended. Registration starts in the afternoon. The program begins at 6. And somewhere in that crowd will be fans who followed her long before any of this made sense to the rest of the country. The ones who were awake while Manila slept, watching her play on courts nobody else was paying attention to. This isn't a routine fan meet. It's the Philippines deciding, all at once, that it's time to show up. But to understand why one mall is about to become the loudest room in Philippine sports, you have to go back 11 days, to the week that changed what Alex Eala means to this country. It all started at the one place she never expected her fate to change. Wimbledon. Center court. The tournament Eala has called her favorite Grand Slam. On the surface she said she feels most at home on. She arrived seeded this time, the first Filipina in history to carry a seed number into a major tournament. On June 30th, she beat Mexico's Renata Zarazua in straight sets, becoming the first Filipino player, man or woman, ever to win a main draw singles match at Wimbledon. 2 days later, she faced Australia's Maya Joint, the same player who'd beaten her at Eastbourne the year before. This time Eala dropped the first set, and then something happened that nobody saw coming. She reeled off 12 straight games to close it out. Revenge, served cold and clean. Then came July 4th. And what happened that day rewrote Philippine tennis history. Iga Swiatek stood across the net from her, the defending Wimbledon champion, the world's third-ranked player, a two-time Grand Slam winner. Eala had once watched graduate from her own countrywoman's academy, from a distance. Swiatek was the wall nobody expected Eala to get through. Not here. Not on grass. Not in the third round. The first set went to a tiebreak, and Eala won it 9-7. Whatever nerves had followed her onto that court didn't survive it. She took the second set 6-2, broke Swiatek's serve repeatedly, saved 8 breakpoints along the way, and closed out the biggest win of her career. She became the first Filipina ever to reach the second week of a Grand Slam. Ever. Within hours, the tennis world reacted in a way that had nothing to do with obligation and everything to do with genuine surprise. Maria Sharapova, the player Eala has called her childhood super idol, left just 2 words. A star. A girl who once wanted nothing more than a photo with her idol was now being called a star by that same idol, unprompted. This wasn't just praise. It felt like a passing of something. Billie Jean King, the woman who beat Bobby Riggs in 1973 and reshaped what women's sports could be, posted her own message, calling Eala an inspiration to children in the Philippines and around the world. Venus Williams sent her regards. So did Catherine, Princess of Wales. And halfway across the world, Manny Pacquiao, the only fighter to hold world titles in 8 weight divisions, dropped a single Filipino flag into the comments. Sit with that image for a second. The boxer who once carried an entire nation's pride into the ring, publicly saluting a 21-year-old tennis player. 2 days later, on July 6th, the story took the turn nobody wanted. Eala's round of 16 opponent was Jasmine Paolini, the 2024 Wimbledon finalist. It went 3 sets, 4-6, 6-4, 3-6, and this time the wall held. Eala's tournament ended in defeat. But this is exactly where the real story begins. There was no time to sit with that loss quietly. The next day, she posted a message of thanks to her team and her supporters. 2 days after that, Globe Telecom, her sponsor, the company that had already made her a Gen G ambassador, announced she'd be coming home to meet the people who carried her through all of it. This is the part of the story that never shows up on a scoreboard. Somewhere between a heartbreaking exit and a hero's welcome, Alex Eala had to find a way to celebrate a loss that still stung. She had to smile for a country ready to throw her a party, before she'd even had the time to fully feel what happened in that third set. That isn't a controversy. It's just the strange, quiet weight of becoming someone people need to see, even in the same week you're still processing what almost was. And here's the question that makes this whole thing even more interesting. How did Globe move this fast? An event of this scale, a public venue, a full program, a media rollout, doesn't get built in 3 days. It gets built in advance, sitting in a drawer, waiting for the right outcome to justify pulling it out. Whatever happened on center court, win or lose, Globe had already decided this year was different. She was worth celebrating either way. Compare that to last year. In 2025, when Eala reached her first WTA 1000 semifinal in Miami as a 140th ranked wildcard, her Globe recognition was a private event inside Globe Tower. Contained. Corporate. This year, the celebration moved to Glorietta, a public mall, open registration, a hashtag inviting an entire crowd instead of a chosen few. That shift, from a closed room to an open one, says everything about how far her commercial gravity has traveled in 12 months. Fans now have to register through the Globe One app just to secure a spot. Alex Eala isn't just filling rooms with people who love tennis anymore. She's building a business case for herself, one appearance at a time. But to really understand this moment, you have to zoom out further than Wimbledon. Eala's rise wasn't sudden, even if it looks that way to people who only just discovered her name this month. It started in March 2025 in Miami, when a 20-year-old ranked 140th in the world walked onto a WTA 1000 court as a wildcard with almost nothing to lose. She beat Grand Slam champion Jelena Ostapenko. She beat Madison Keys. She advanced when Paula Badosa withdrew injured. And in the quarterfinals, she beat Iga Swiatek for the first time, the same player she'd face again, on a much bigger stage, more than a year later. She reached the semi-final before falling to Jessica Pegula, but by then, it didn't matter. She'd already become the first Filipina to reach a WTA 1000 semi-final, the first to crack the world's top 100, and the foundation for everything that followed. From there, the climb kept going. A maiden WTA final at Eastbourne. Her first WTA 125 title in Guadalajara. A career-high ranking of world number 29 heading into this season. Then, this year alone, a second WTA 125 title in Birmingham, a semi-final run in Berlin where she beat two more top 10 opponents in Elena Rybakina and Alina Svitolina, and a 12-4 record across the entire grass season, capped by a Wimbledon run that rewrote the Philippine tennis record book 3 times over. None of that reads like luck. It reads like a plan that kept working. Filipino tennis fans understood this long before Sharapova's comment made headlines. They were the ones awake at 3 in the morning for Eastbourne. The ones tracking WTA 125 draws that most casual sports fans have never even heard of. The ones who watched her climb from outside the top 100 without a single sponsor stampede behind her. They believed in the trajectory before the trajectory had a name. Now everyone else has caught up, the brands, the media outlets, the corporations lining up to be associated with her. Glorietta, on July 15th, is where that late-arriving recognition and that early patient belief finally occupy the same room. And there's one more thing about this evening that most people don't realize. By all accounts, this fan meet is Eala's only major public appearance on home soil before she returns to competition. After Glorietta, she heads straight into the hardcourt swing, the Washington, D.C. Open at the end of July, then a seeded run at the National Bank Open in Toronto, Cincinnati after that, and finally the U.S. Open in New York at the end of August. One evening. One mall. One chance to connect with the people who made her, before she disappears back into the tour for the rest of the summer. That's exactly why the Sharapova moment is worth returning to. It wasn't a routine congratulatory comment from one athlete to another. Eala has said publicly more than once that Sharapova was the player she looked up to most. Her mentality, the way she carried herself on court, the way she presented herself off it. So when Sharapova, unprompted, called her a star after the biggest win of her career, it read as something far bigger than a ranking jump. It was a private, full-circle moment playing out in public. A girl who once wanted a photograph with her idol was now being recognized by that same idol as a peer. Now zoom out even further, because this isn't just a tennis story anymore. The Philippines has produced global sporting icons before, in boxing, in billiards, in volleyball. For nearly 2 decades, Manny Pacquiao carried that weight almost alone, becoming a kind of national shorthand for what it meant for a Filipino to conquer the world stage. Tennis, a sport with almost no infrastructure and no real history of producing global names in this country, was never supposed to be next. And yet here she is. People who admit they don't fully understand the sport still know her name, still rearrange their sleep schedules around matches played in cities most of them will never visit. A sports broadcaster who spent her own career chasing a ranking, Eala has already surpassed several times over, comparing her rise to knowing a music star before anyone else did. The comparisons to Pacquiao aren't about the sport. They're about what it means when a country recognizes itself in one athlete's persistence. Globe's decision to throw open the doors of a public mall for her homecoming reflects exactly that shift. This isn't a company betting on a promising young player anymore. It's a company recognizing that the country has already made up its mind about who she is. So look again at the shape of these 11 days. July 4th, the biggest win of her career, over a defending champion, validated instantly by the players she grew up admiring. July 6th, the loss that ended the run, 3 sets deep, right at the doorstep of the quarterfinals. July 7th, a quiet thank you, posted before the sting had time to fade. July 9th, an entire country's biggest telecom company deciding, without hesitation, that this story deserved a public stage. July 15th, that stage built, lit, and waiting for her. Alex Eala didn't win Wimbledon this year. She didn't even reach the quarterfinals. And yet in 11 days, she's going home to what will likely be remembered as one of the largest public celebrations a Filipino tennis player has ever received. That gap, between the result on paper and the reception waiting for her at Glorietta, says more about what she's become to this country than any trophy ever could. When she finally takes that microphone on July 15th, there's a real question worth asking. What does she say to a crowd that showed up in force for a quarterfinal loss? And after Glorietta, after Washington, after Toronto and Cincinnati, when she walks onto a court at the US Open in New York, will this turn out to be the biggest homecoming of her career so far, or just the one right before something even bigger? From Glorietta, to Washington, to New York, this is a story that's only getting louder from here.